ಒಂದು ಸಿನಿಮಾ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ತಮಿಳ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. ಸಿನಿಮಾ ಹೆಸರು ವರುಮೈயின் நிறம் சிவப்பு ಅಂತ. ವರುಮೈயின் நிறம் சிவப்பு ಅಂದರೆ ಕಲರ್ ಆಫ್ ಪಾವರ್ಟಿ ಇಸ್ ರೆಡ್. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಡೈಲಾಗ್ ಇದೆ, ಕಮಲ್ ಹಾಸನ್ ಶ್ರೀದೇವಿ ಇಬ್ಬರು ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಆ್ಯಕ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಸೀನಲ್ಲಿ ಕಮಲ್ ಹಾಸನ್ ಫೋಟೋ ಕಸ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಅದು ಫೋಟೋ ಹಡ್ಕೊಟ್ಬೇಕಂದ್ರೆ ಅದು ಕಮಲ್ ಹಾಸನಲ್ಲಿ ಕಸ ಒಳಗಡೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಕೈ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಅದು ಐ ಆಮ್ ಸೇಯಿಂಗ್ ಇನ್ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್. ಸೊ when he searches for that photograph, Sridevi asks him, what, you don't go so inside? And then he said, no, I need to go inside because if I search more I might find socialism in it. So he says. So that is important. I mean, I remember it because of one reason, that today the constitutional promise of socialism is somewhere completely gone. And this is regardless of the government in power. And that is important for us to say. So, Maitri, will you translate at the end? Okay. So, I just want to say very simply 2-3 things. One is, there are 3 aspects for us to think about. One is constitutional. Second is moral and legal. And third is economic. All 3 are interrelated. And as Narayan just said, I think we need to think of all these things together and not as separate. There was discussion on Ganite, dignity. I'll start with that. There is a famous English writer called George Orwell who wrote a very beautiful thing. He said, either everyone lives with dignity or nobody does. And that is also very central to us to understand, because if in a society, if 90% of the people are living in conditions of extreme oppression, it is a reflection of our society that none of us have dignity if 90% of the people are living in that kind of condition. So that is one central thing. On constitutional aspects, there is Article 14, 21, 23, all of that has been spoken already. I'll talk a little bit about the economic aspects here. There is very well researched ideas saying that if the top 20% people in the country, if their incomes are increasing by some percentage, then the GDP goes down, because we care. In India, all the big people, they say India's growth, GDP is growing at some rate and this and that. But the important thing to note is, and this is not me saying, even a very neoliberal organization like the International Monetary Fund, even they have come up with papers which say that when the bottom 20%'s income increases, then the GDP grows faster than the top 20%'s income. And in India, what is the status of the bottom 20%'s income? Not just bottom 20%, bottom 90%'s income. Using government data, government comes up with something called the periodic labor force, where they try to estimate what is the income levels of the working class in the country. According to periodic labor force itself, what we see is that in the last 10 years, although the GDP has grown at some level, but the wages of the working class, wages of across, whether it is even regular salaried, self-employed and casual labor, has been flat. There is no increase. Now, when the wages of the working class has remained flat in the last 10 years and the GDP is growing, the real question is, who is the GDP growth benefiting? Now, we need to address that head on, and we have a constitutional promise of socialism to take it head on. There is another important committee that was constituted by the Ministry of Labor and Employment, and that committee was called it was chaired by this person called Anup Satpathy, and they came up with a number saying that in India, at least on average in the country, the wages should be minimum, floor wages should be 375 per day. And what, again, using government's own data, we did an estimate of how many people in the country are earning less than that 375 per day. On the other hand, the policies of the government are clearly favoring one kind of caste, one kind of class, and one kind of religion. So it is this twin policies, which is politics of precarity, which is making sure that a large section of the people are retained in that kind of chakravyu. Chakravyu meaning it's that thing in Mahabharata, no? When Abhimanyu had gone. So it's like that. When a large section of the people are just reproducing within their own caste, within their own class, so their children will continue to do the same kind of work. Whereas another section will keep on having the benefit. They are escaping the chakravyu. The other section is not able to escape. And here it is important for us to think on those lines, because every amount of money, every rupee that is spent in a certain, that is taken away from social sector policies, whether it is health, whether it is public education, whether it is construction of public toilets, every rupee that is taken away from that is being used to fuel a certain kind of casteist narrative, a certain kind of classist narrative, a certain kind of Hindutva kind of narrative. So the question in front of us is a question of a conflict between nationalism and nationalization. And we need to address that. Every rupee spent against nationalization is spent for nationalism. And we need to take that head on. So that raises the question of who constitutes the majority in the country. If you look at numbers, if you look at economic numbers, then it's the poor that constitute the majority in the country. And none of the policies are actually favoring the majority in the country. And even among the poor, who constitute the majority within the poor? It's Dalits, Adivasis combined. That segment constitutes the majority within the majority. Although, and this is, we have to go back to Ambedkar, because Ambedkar said that how do we think of majority and minority? Majority needs to be thought as those who have the most power. In numbers, who are the most numerical in India, who constitute majority? It's the poor, it's the Dalits, it's the Adivasis. In terms of power, who constitute the majority? It's certain caste people, certain upper caste people, certain class and certain religion people. So I think we need to really overturn. And one last point I want to make is the question of fraternity. The fact that fraternity is a constitutional promise. Fraternity, bandhutva, it is not just a question of two religions, every caste, a casteless society, or every religion being together. It is not just that. Fraternity is also good economics. Unless there is fraternity, we will not have the bottom 20, 30, 40% rising in their economic status. Unless we have that, we will not have GDP growth at all. When there is compromise on fraternity, there is social tension. When there is social tension, that automatically has an impact on economic tension, economic conflict. So I think we need to think in terms of improving fraternity, as this is vital for our economic growth, not just as a constitutional and a legal and a moral promise, but also fraternity is good economics. So I think, summing up all of this, what is important is to push for living wages, and we have a strong case to go for living wages. We have Supreme Court judgments, Raptakor's Brecht judgment is there. We have even 1949, the Fair Wages Committee talked about the importance of living wages. And we have strong economic reasons to push for living wages, because unless we have all of them together, improved social sector spending, because unless we have improved social sector spending, we will not have a healthy workforce. Unless we have a healthy workforce, we will not be able to contribute to the economic prosperity of the country. So we need good public health, we need good public education. All of this together we need to take forward, because ultimately these are all connected to fraternity, and fraternity is connected to good economics. I think I'll stop there. Specific, I think, demands we can work together, and I'm happy to participate in any way possible in this whole idea with AICCT. Thank you.